start, we hopefully just want to kind of give a bit of a demo of how it's set up, what functions are there, kind of a presentation, pros and cons maybe kind of thing, and then after that answer any of your questions. So welcome.
Thanks for having me, guys. I was going to just show you, I was going to give you the link of, because I can live stream this on YouTube, no worries, and I was going to give you the link, but our upload speed is quite poor, so it was going to be very cutty, so that's not going to happen tonight, but I am recording it, so I'll have some different shots for that, which will be cool. Yeah, so Rob's just giving you a bit of my background. So I'm a freelance AV technician, so I work mainly doing corporate work throughout the week, running conferences and having my hands on all this stuff. So a bit of audio, a bit of lighting, a bit of vision, a bit of everything. So you got to kind of be the jack of all trades. What I'd like to do, I'm going to give you a bit of a rundown of kind of the concepts behind streaming. And then from there, I know it's a bit overwhelming, some of the stuff, but I don't like to do things in halves. So I've bought a bunch of the gear so you can kind of see how I do it on the higher end. But then I'll bring it back to show you, you know, how you can do it on a lower end as well, like without being over the top. But it's cool to see some of the toys that we've got as well, and even those kind of things are getting cheaper and cheaper as well. So yeah, looking at the board there, the streaming presentation, I'll go through basically the different concepts of what's involved. Based on trying to present it to you from a point of view that you don't have any understanding of it, but some of it is a bit technical as well. But the kind of crowd I've got, I think you'll hopefully you'll understand, and definitely ask us any questions you like at the end. So yeah, I'll just go through. So what you need to start live streaming, there's 4 kind of key areas, and you'll see with this diagram, it just shows you the kind of the flow. But yeah, so the first is the video and audio sources, which is your cameras, or your laptops. You can have if you need to show some vision off a laptop, or I'm doing this off an iPad. So that's your audio and your video sources. Audio sources for me right now, I'm not giving you a live sound out here. I did have a speaker and looked at the room and went, that's a bit ridiculous, I won't do that. But I could have put this through as well as a live sound. But what I've got in here in my face, the microphone, is to give us a nice clean sound for the video when it comes back. And I've got that coming through, and I'll show you a bit more of that later on. So there's your first step is your video and your audio sources. Next is your video encoder. So this is it can either be computer software, or it can be a standalone hardware which handles the encoding. And I'll get more about what that is in the next little bit for version, but you can do a little bit more with it. But that's your streaming platform. And then the last thing, which we haven't got tonight, is a stable internet connection. So for you to have a steady stream, for it to work well, you really need to have good uploads. These days, generally, I'm doing most of them through my phone, or I've got a 4G router. My phone has 5G. Normally that's fine, but you do have some areas where you just can't get the speeds. And then you might, so ideally you want to try and get a hardwired connection. But if you haven't got that, the phone these days is pretty good. I tend to do most of my gigs without any dropped frames at all. So it means the connection's steady enough for that to happen. But the settings you set up can, like, I'll talk about it later too, but the settings is really important so that you're not dropping frames, and it's not a really cutty, you know, when you've watched too much. Thanks for having me, guys. I was going to just show you, I was going to give you the link of, because I can live stream this on YouTube, no worries, and I was going to give you the link, but our upload speed is quite poor, so it was going to be very cutty, so that's not going to happen tonight. But I am recording it, so I'll have some different shots for that, which will be cool. Yeah, so Rob's just giving you a bit of my background. So I'm a freelance AV technician, so I work mainly doing corporate work throughout the week, running conferences and having my hands on all this stuff. So a bit of audio, a bit of lighting, a bit of vision, a bit of everything. So you got to kind of be the jack of all trades in this field. And I find, because I do feel comfortable in all those areas, I am able to get lots of work in those different fields, which is cool. And so I do a lot of the corporate stuff, but also I work a bit with another company doing a lot of music stuff as well, so I do a lot of festivals and sound and lighting and that side of things as well. But this setup that I've kind of put together, this little rack here, is one I've put together, and with the cameras which I've built over a long time, and they're not like your super high-end cameras. This one's is, but it's old as well. But piecing it all together and with components that are pretty reasonably priced these days, I've got quite a good setup. And so what I'd like to do, I'm going to give you a bit of a rundown of kind of the concepts behind streaming. And then from there, I know it's a bit overwhelming, some of the stuff, but I don't like to do things in halves. So I've bought a bunch of the gear so you can kind of see how I do it on the higher end. But then I'll bring it back to show you, how you can do it on a lower end as well, like without being over the top. But it's cool to see some of the toys that we've got as well, and even those kind of things are getting cheaper and cheaper as well. So looking at the board there, the streaming presentation, I'll go through basically the different concepts of what's involved. Basically, I'm trying to present it to you from a point of view that you don't have any understanding of it, but some of it is a bit technical as well. But the kind of crowd I've got, I think you'll hopefully you'll understand, and definitely ask us any questions you like at the end. So I'll just go through. So what you need to start live streaming, there's 4 kind of key areas. You'll see with this diagram, it just shows you the kind of the flow. But so the first is the video and audio sources, which is your cameras. Or your laptops, you can have if you need to show some vision off a laptop, or I'm doing this off an iPad. So that's your audio and your video sources. The audio sources, for me, right now, I'm not giving you a live sound out here. I did have a speaker, and looked at the room, went, that's a bit ridiculous, I won't do that. But I could have put this through as well as a live sound. But what I've got in here in my face, the microphone, is to give us a nice clean sound for the video when it comes back. And I've got that coming through, and I'll show you a bit more of that later on. So there's your first step is your video and your audio sources. Next is your video encoder. So this is it can either be computer software, or it can be a standalone hardware which handles the encoding. And I'll get more about what that is in the next little bit. But so that's the second thing you need. So either software or hardware. Third is your streaming destination. So that's things like YouTube, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Twitch, Vimeo is one of the ones that's more of a paid for version, but you can do a little bit more with it. But that's your streaming platform. And then the last thing, which we haven't got tonight, is a stable internet connection. So for you to have a steady stream and for it to work well, you really need to have good uploads. These days, generally, I'm doing most of them through my phone, or I've got a 4G router. My phone has 5G. Normally that's fine, but you do have some areas where you just can't get the speeds. And then you might... so ideally, you want to try and get a hardwired connection. But if you haven't got that, the phone these days is pretty good. I tend to do most of my gigs without any dropped frames at all. So it means the connection's steady enough for that to happen. But there's the settings you set up can, I'll talk about it later too, but the settings is really important so that you're not dropping frames. It's not a really cutty, when you've watched stuff back and then you get the horrible wheel or it's jumpy, then that's probably because the settings that the person set up to stream it, either the connection's no good or they're trying to give it too much data. So you've got to optimize those settings, but it's not too hard to understand. So that's the basic things we need. So first I'll just go through those different 4 areas. So first of all, the video and the audio sources. As I mentioned before, so the stream of video data from a camera, for example, is the video source, and basically for streaming, it might consist of just one video source and audio source, or like in this situation, we can have multiple, and we can combine them together with a mixer. There's just a bit of a list of the different things we have. So we might have a DSLR camera, which we got up the back there, camcorder, which is like these little guys, which a lot of you probably have at home sitting there and haven't used for ages. A computer screen. So I've got a laptop I'm going into here, which I'll show you later. The webcam. So your webcam's your basic cam, and a lot of computers are built in. You can use that, or you're built into the phones or tablets. You can use those. Usually USB, so they're a little bit easy to put into the system, but quality isn't usually as good as what you can do with these other cameras. PTZ camera, that's the guy which I've got up the back there, and that's... I'll get into it a bit later, but the which one's that one? 7. I'll bring that up here. This is the camera here, and I can pan, tilt, zoom, so you can move it around, and that's really powerful to give you lots of different shots. I'll show I've got some presets. So I'm on my tight shot. If I go to preset 1, oh, that was preset 1, sorry. I've got it, and now I can go to a wide shot, and you can quickly get to shots. I did just a silly one before. On the back wall there's a poster, and I got that, nice and tight on the very back wall. So you don't know, it can make you a bit seasick seeing the movements. So normally I'd cut to a different camera when I'm doing those movements, but that gives you a lot of power. So you pan, tilt, zoom, and then your phone or tablet camera, which I mentioned before. And for live streaming, you do not have to have a storage card in your camera. So like often we might do it for backup, is we'll press record on some of the cameras that we've got around, just in case everything fails, we've got a backup recording. But in general, so for example, this big camera here looks very fancy and very expensive. In its day it was. And it's got a lot of good features for getting all the colours and everything right. But it records to mini DV tape. Now, these days, not many people are using it. It's probably not even manufactured anymore, so they're hard to get, and they're really slow to upload. So you've got to upload them in real time. So, time as a factor these days, no one's using them anymore. So you can get these cameras really cheap, but all the lens and everything on it is fantastic. But it's got a HDMI output, so I was able to still get a HD picture. It's just I would never use it to record to the camera, but on what I'm doing today is I'm recording onto this little hard drive here, the whole lot. So that's, it's a lot more usable. So, yeah. And then the audio sources, they can come from different things. They can actually come from your cameras, but normally the microphones on the cameras will pick up a lot of ambient noise. So if you're in a noisy room, it's not the greatest sound. So if you can, in a situation, if you've got someone presenting that if you've got a microphone close to them, you're going to get less room noise and background noise and everyone coughing, and get more of what's going on here. And what I've got here is a wireless headset mic. And the good thing about a headset mic is when I move my head, it moves with me, so I get consistent sound the whole time. And because it's so close, it doesn't get a lot of background noise. So if I look back at the recording, my sound will be really nice and tight. And I can see on my levels here, I've got it happening. It'll be nice and loud. And so if I was doing a stream, it was working. Someone listening and watching on their phone, they'll be really good. Audio is so important with a live stream, even though it's the vision. If your audio is not right, you'll find people switch off. If they can't hear it properly, they go, that's where they'll tune out. So the audio is a really important part of it. So not forgetting that. So I can talk a bit later how I get that into the system to make it all connect. So how to capture the audio and video sources. So with these cameras, they're all coming either by HDMI, which many of you will have HDMI with your devices at home these days that plug into your telly. That's pretty standard these days. And a lot of this actual device I'm using is mainly HDMI. But especially in professional land, SDI is used, and that's using the coaxial cable, and that is really reliable and great for long runs. So HDMI has a lot of issues over length, so you can get up to probably 30 metres. I was talking to Rex before, about 30 metres is about maximum you'll get without it giving you issues. And those cables need a special booster on them as well, and they can only go one way, and they get quite thick. However, SDI, the cable I'm running, some SDI from the back on that camera, is that cable there. And it's just got a converter that goes back to HDMI for me. But it's just a 75 ohm coaxial cable. So, and I've run 100 metres with that, no problems at all. So it's especially if you've got cameras in different places and you want long lengths, SDI is really good. Anything else on that was... No, that's cool. All right. So the second important part of, especially the streaming side of it, is the video encoder. So what is a video encoder and why do I need one? So the encoder translates the video signal for the internet. So effectively what it does, the cameras, the way they're built and the signal they put out is high quality, and the files they create are large. So getting that to the internet and streaming it is no good for us. So the encoder basically strips it all down, makes it much smaller, and then you're dealing with a much smaller file for the internet to handle, but still at a great quality that people can watch very comfortably. So that the encoder's dealing with that. It's getting the information and then compressing it so then you can put it online. And so there's either software encoders, which I'll show you, OBS, which is a free one, and a lot of people are using it. We use it in the professional land as well. It's just a really good program that works. And then you've got hardware encoders, which I've got one right here. But basically, a hardware encoder is a device like this one, which is a switch, and I'll show you that later. Its processing happens in there. So there's kind of benefits and of both. Like OBS is great for starting and getting things happening, but once you start doing a lot more work, if you got something that's a dedicated hardware encoder, then it's less you're not less reliant on the computer, because the encoding takes a lot of CPU power on the computer. So you need a really good computer, or otherwise a hardware encoder will be a better option. Yeah, I just talked about those. Real common one these days is the ATM Mini Pro. I've got the Mini Extreme, which is a bigger version of this. And so this is an example of a hardware encoder and a really reasonable price too. So this little guy, you're looking at about $400 or $500 for this one. But for what it does, it's really powerful. So you can, the 1, 2, 3, 4, you can handle 4 inputs in. So you could have 4 cameras or any devices such as laptops in. And then this deals with the audio side of it. So you can the audio off the cameras, you can mix it all with the buttons, or you can have it off, and you can also have, there's mic 1 or mic 2, so it just has little 3.5 inputs, and which is on the back, you'll see over that side, the 2 mic inputs. So what you can do is you can get a little mixer, and mix a couple of microphones and down to 3.5, and then you can have that in here. And that's what I tend to do when using these in corporate land, is get a mixer, get my sound happening, make it sound nice and clean, then just go into one of the inputs on here. Don't use any of the camera mics, because they tend to be, as I said before, a bit troublesome and not the greatest sound for what we're after. But good to have there if you suddenly need a bit of crowd noise. you've got a crowd microphone, so you can use them, and you can bring them in and out really easy on this. And then over here, you can change some settings. You got some cut, auto, so you can either cut when you push the button and change the which input it is. It can either snap, or you can go nice and smooth with auto. But I won't get too much into that. Some picture-in-picture stuff, which I'll show later, and then the video out. But that's a little basic version, and that's an example of a hardware encoder, which is pretty reasonably priced, and what a lot of guys are going for now. That's amazing. Blackmagic, really good quality stuff, but they've made the price pretty low, which is cool. Yeah, that's right. So just talk about a couple of different areas, just about the encoder. So when we're setting up the encoder, this is getting a little bit complex, but just so you're aware of these areas, I won't get too in-depth with it. But these are the most important encoder settings. So when you're setting it up so that the Extreme works, like I was saying before, if you haven't got these settings right, that's where you can get it really jumpy, or if you've got your settings too low, it'll stream really smoothly, but it'll look really bad. So like, when you get a picture, it's a bit blurry because it's just not enough data in there. So you've kind of got to balance it right. So the key things that you're looking out for. So the first one is frame rate. So the frame rate is how many frames per second. So if anyone's worked with video stuff before, that's not going to be anything new. But so the common input, so just to show you an example, so 10 frames per second, that's outrageously low, infuriating to the human eye, so that's no good. 24 or 30 frames per second is standard for digital video, and that's pretty good, and we accept that. And then if you've got 60 frames per second, it's beautiful and lifelike, but it's you'll find it won't work as well with streaming all the time. So that's why most people stick to about 24 to 30 frames. The next thing is the output resolution. So like you have on a television, the different output resolutions. So you got 480p. So what that means is the dimension in pixels is 858 by 480. And that's what we call, otherwise known as standard definition. Then we have 720p, which our dimensions is 1280 by 720 pixels. And that's our HD. Then 1080p, which is your full, otherwise known as full HD, and that's 1920 by 1080. And then these days we got up to 4K, which is, it's double 1080, which is 3840 by 2160, and otherwise known as UHD or Ultra HD. And you'll see, like, you hear all these terms a lot with, you go into JB Hi-Fi, you look at the tallies, you'll see these terms all the time. Where they become important for us, that's how, like, obviously the higher resolution, the sharper the image, but the more the higher it is, the more data. So you've got to balance all that out. So what I've said over here, the most common resolution we use today is 720 and 1080, because as soon as you, like 4K, it still takes a lot of processing, especially for streaming. You need a really hot internet connection to make that work, so it's not ideal. So, but that's, resolution we've got to take into play. And then, so today, if I wanted to actually get the stream out and I didn't have much, I would have had to go 480p, go the lowest resolution. And then the next thing is the bit rate. And that's, the bit rate is how much data you are sending out. So how much data you are uploading per second. So generally expressed in kilobits per second, although megabits can also be used. That you've got, our common values are 1,000 kilobytes per second, 2.5 or 3,000. 3,000 kilobits per second is about what you want as kind of for a good quality production as a minimum. If you can get higher than that, it's going to be a higher quality picture as well. Where this ties in with to make sense of where it fits in, when I tested that before I did a speed test and saw what my phone, it's all about the upload. When you're sending the vision, it's your upload that you're doing. So if you've ever seen that, so at home on the internet, I can get 40, 50 megabits per second upload, and that's good. That's heaps. What we're looking at here, how this ties in, obviously this is 3,000 kilobits is 3 megabits. So what we're looking at, your internet connection. So for me to comfortably run my stream at 3,000 kilobits per second, I need to have 3 megabits per second upload when I do my speed test. Today I had 0.55 and then I had 0.22. So to run my stream, I would have been less than 1,000 kilobits per second. And our general rule of thumb, I might have written it here somewhere, general rule of thumb is you want to go at least 75%. You want to have your connection, you're only going to do 75%. So if you want to do 3,000 kilobits, you want to have at least a 4 meg upload, because it's going to fluctuate a little bit. So if you can't go right on the limit, otherwise you'll still have dropouts. But if I had 40 megabits like at home, I can run them comfortably and go higher. I can boost it up. So, but that's something to look at. And the next thing is the codec. H.264 is the standard codec these days, and that's just the method of compressing. But the most common one, which is used, H.264. Don't really need to know that, but you'll probably see that coming along it. And this is what I was talking about here: keeping a fine balance between the bit rate, the frame rate, which we had before, the output resolution is what makes a good stream. So how high you can go depends largely on the type of encoder you use and your internet bandwidth. So that's why we'll always do a speed test at the start, see where our internet's sitting, and then we know where we can comfortably set up all these settings. Cool. Then the streaming destination. So is your online platform or app where your video becomes live to others. So there are paid streaming platforms as well, and these offer much more control over who you want to come in and how the stream is monetized. But free or paid, you need to sign up, log into the platform of your choice, and then I think YouTube takes a few extra steps just to kind of get you rolling. You can't do it straight away. There's a bit of a waiting period, but once you've got it set up, it's pretty straightforward to do, and I'll show you a bit of that later. And then obviously the last one was a stable internet connection, which is obvious what we're talking about before. Cool. So just to summarise, I'll just try and bring it all back just a bit simpler. There's 5 steps to stream. So how to live stream, 5 basic steps. So step 1, connect your audio and video sources to the encoder. So it depends on what encoder you're using. Either you'll have a hardware one like I've got here, or the computer and software. Step 2, you've got to configure the encoder. So that's just putting in all those settings we just talked about. So you can configure the most important streaming settings, so the resolution, frame rate, and bit rate. So if you're doing it on the software, I can show you a little bit of that in a second. That's where you put all those settings in. Or if you've got a hardware encoder, there's still software to be able to adjust those settings as well. Third is configuring the streaming destination. So what you do is you log into your live streaming platform. So I can show you on YouTube and where you do that. You fill out your description of what you want it to be. and then you'll get a share code, and you can email it out to everyone in your group, and then tell them what time it's happening, and then they click on that link, and then that's how they get to it. So if you have a look on forget all the information on there, but this is the picture of the YouTube one. Up the top, you click to go live, and then you choose Stream Now, and then you can put in all the settings, and then you can put in the information for people to find. The one I set up today, I did as an unlisted one, so people can't find it. Like they can't just search for it. If you wanted to be open to everyone, you could have it so anyone can search it. But normally you can make it unlisted. It means it's still it's pretty free access, but you need to know the code, and the code's a little bit complex. So it's a pretty safe way of doing it. Or you can make it private, where it's you've got to allow people, and via their names and everything, it gets really complicated and hard for people to access, and they'll have troubles all the time. So. And then step 4, so you just copy and paste the URL and the stream key into the encoder. I'll show you the stream key in a second. The stream key is a really important part of it if you're the one that's doing the streaming. So it's just a special key that's given to you so that you can link it back to YouTube, for example. And then last step is start streaming. Click start streaming on your encoder. So that's how it